Today we are going to do a full flip through of my A6 Hobonichi Techo Original and my weekly supplement. I didn't start out 2024 using these two books as my main planner. So around halfway through last year, I was using my Hobonichi Cousin as my workbook and my main schedule, and then I was using my traveler's notebook as a daily to-do list. And so about halfway through the year, I decided to experiment with switching into these two books, mainly because these are more portable and I liked that I could bring this out with me when I needed to. So I'm going to show you the evolution of how I started with these two books and how I ended, so you can get an idea of how I'll be using these same books in 2025. So if that sounds like something that would interest you, then I invite you to grab yourself a cozy beverage. Today I am drinking a hot water, and my snack of choice are these green tea mini chocolate biscuits. I actually opened these at my live stream yesterday, and we determined that they rivaled the Kit Kat Uji matcha that we got in Japan as well. So I'm excited to have another one. This is what they look like. And grab yourself a journal or a planner or whatever cozy activity you'd like to have with you while we hang out and chat. Before we get into the flip through, I do have some updates that I want to share with you. If you're not interested in the updates, I will leave a timestamp so you can jump right ahead to the full flip through. The first thing that I wanted to say was thank you so much to everyone who took the time to join me in my live stream yesterday. I was fully prepared to come on the live stream and just record myself moving in from my 2024 journals into my 2025 ones, because I really wanted to set aside some time to keep myself accountable to actually moving into my new planners. And my hope was that maybe there were some others who were also struggling to make that transition and move into their new planners for whatever reason, and I was hoping that if we set aside some time, we could help each other, motivate each other, and encourage each other to move into our new planners. Having said that, I was blown away by all of you who showed up, and I'm also still receiving messages that some of you are watching the replay, so thank you so much. I enjoyed myself even more than I thought I would. Time flew by. Maybe I tried to cram too much into it. I just had so much fun interacting with you, and it validates what I've been hoping to do this year, which is find new ways to connect with you above and beyond these asynchronous videos that I record. And you don't want to watch the whole 2+ hours live stream, and I wouldn't blame you if that's the case. I had the most fun near the end when we all started collectively meal planning together. So there was something really special about how we were all sharing recipes and giving each other ideas on what we wanted to think about cooking in the coming weeks. And one of you, Lillian, very generously typed up her miso soup recipe, and with her permission, I thought it would be a really fun idea to continue crowdsourcing some of our favorite recipes and consolidating it in a living document that we can access and go to when we're looking for inspiration or motivation or different ideas for our own meal plans. So I did go ahead and create that document. My hope is that we can continue to crowdsource and add to it and access it. So I'll leave a link in the video description below if you want to check it out. And I've also created a Google form where you can submit your own recipes. And of course, I will be very happy to credit you. I will not touch your recipes. I will not make any edits. All I'm planning on doing is just adding to the document, and I hope over time we can have a really nice repository of recipes that we can go to when we're meal planning. So thank you everyone for that, and I think tentatively we're going to try to do this on a semi-regular cadence, and I'm thinking maybe every 2 weeks because I meal plan every 2 weeks. So I think the next one will probably be January the 18th. I will post more information and I will schedule the live stream. So check out the community tab if you want more information on that. And I hope to see you there. And if not, no worries. I will always try to make sure that the recordings are available after the live stream has ended so you can watch and catch up at your convenience. I will start off with the weekly supplement because this is the first thing that I reach for in my whole planning routine. This is the first thing that I update. So usually on Sunday night or Friday night at the end of the day, I'll open this up to the upcoming week. I will start to populate the weekly view with all of the meetings that I know are coming up. From there, I will formulate any related to-do list items that will go in here, or I will do my meal planning because I will plan the nights that I will cook around my schedule if I'm working into the evening or not. At the beginning of 2024, I actually didn't use this. I had bought this hoping that I could maybe use it, but I tried to use it exactly as I was using my Hobonichi Cousin. And as you may know, the Hobonichi Cousin vertical is much bigger. It's A5 size. So it had a lot of room to add my meetings as well as life log moments that I thought I might want to reference later. So I tried it for a little while. I actually used real information, so I can't show you those pages, but basically I realized very quickly that I wasn't going to be able to use this if I wanted to replicate how I was using it in the Cousin. So I put it aside for about half a year and I just determined that it wasn't going to work for me. And then Himawari Stationery, I will link her channel below, posted a video where she showed herself using this weekly supplement, and the way she used it inspired me so much to try it again because as much as I love the Cousin for its ability to be an all-in-one book, it's simply too big for me to take around with me. Like if I'm going out, I don't want to bring that book. I love using that book on my desk. I can fit so much information, but as a portable book, it's too heavy. I don't bring it with me. And so I gave it another try. And the first few months was me using using existing information and just trying out different layouts. So this wasn't done in real time. I will show you when I started to use this in real time. But just to give you a sense, a lot of this information is censored, unfortunately, but hopefully you can still get a sense of what is going on here. But I started color coding different things that I wanted to track, especially because some of the work I do is project-based and I have to track my hours. And so color coding was a really helpful way for me to do that. You'll see that I also would write out my activity because I like being able to see when I'm able to fit in some exercise. And I also tried putting in a couple of life log type things just because I do update my 5-year Hobonichi at the end of the week. And so sometimes I use this book to help me remember what happened throughout the week. Although this year I'm thinking about doing my memory keeping in my traveler's notebook insert instead. So this might be a bit different. But yeah, this is basically what I started to do. So I love the color coding and I liked this sort of light memory keeping that I was doing. If this information isn't censored, by the way, that's because this was like experimental, which means all of these names are already changed. So I'm really serious about protecting people's privacy and confidentiality. So I did take a lot of time to go through and censor any real information. So again, anything you see here, this is all already anonymized. My work is very meetings based. And so I find having a vertical weekly extremely important for me. Back when I was in more of a permanent full-time role, I relied completely on my Google Calendar. And so I wouldn't find a vertical weekly that helpful because my entire day at work was constantly changing. And the only way I could keep up was by referencing my digital calendar. Now my work is different, so I find the Vertical Weekly an essential tool. Because it's a thinner book, I didn't feel too nervous about bulking it up with stickers because I knew that it was only going to get so thick, and I really appreciated that about this book. So over time, I really fell in love with this small book, and I have my laptop on a stand, and I'm able to prop up my weekly supplement right where my laptop is, and so I can see a visual of my entire week at all times, and I love that. So this is still me experimenting and trying out this layout and seeing if I could really see myself using this supplement. That's why these are a lot neater. Okay, so after I did that experiment of backdating and seeing how I felt about it, I decided I really wanted to give it a try and use it in real time. Yeah, so around here is when I started to use it in real time. And one of the decisions I made is a little bit of work, but I think is worth it, is the default timeline allocates 1 square per hour. So you can, if you can see here, it starts at 6 a.m. and then there's a 7, 8, 9 a.m., 12, 15. I realized as I was doing my experiments that I didn't need the whole space, and so I was sort of squeezing in my days between 7 to about 9 o'clock. And then I had all this room at the bottom, and I could have just continued to use this room at the bottom for stickers. I could have tried to use it as like a to-do list, or I even thought about recording my meals down here at one point. But I decided instead to erase the original timeline and to renumber it so that I could allocate 2 boxes per hour, which was a lot better for me because a lot of my meetings start halfway, like at 9:30, or sometimes I have meetings that are only 30 minutes long, and it's a lot easier to color in 1 box for a half hour than to try to, color in half of a box to allocate half an hour. So this is the biggest change that I've made to the supplement, and I think that really transformed it into being something super useful for me. And so for 2025, I'm just taking my time, slowly using a Posca marker and whiting these out. So all I do is I just color these in, and then I let it dry, and then I go back, I turn the page and do the next one. So it's taking some time. I'm just taking my time renumbering it, and it's like a slow project that I work on when I'm in front of the TV or have some downtime. So that really helped me spread out my schedule, and it just made it so much easier to use it to plan my weeks. So here you can see in pencil, I started recording the hours I spent on certain tasks. I found this really helpful because I can look at these color codes and I know what each of them refer to, and then it's just easier for me to tally up my hours at the end of the week. It's mainly for meetings and work-related tasks that I want to have a record of, but I also have a little bit of light memory keeping, which just makes it a little more pleasant to look at, so it's not all work. And something else that I do is I use a marker to write out things that are more personal related. So for example, if I knew I was going to be seeing my parents, I might write mom and dad. I write it with my Tombow marker, and then if it doesn't happen, I just color over it and it just becomes like a color blob. If I write it out and then it happens, then I will outline it with a pen, so that indicates that that happened. I don't know if that makes sense, but plans change, it's just the way things go, and so instead of crossing things out, I just thought this was a little more aesthetically pleasing to write it out with marker and then to kind of color it out in case it doesn't happen. So I'll see if I can find an example of that. So this is an example. I had plans to meet someone and then it got canceled. So I just colored it in, and then I ended up actually using that time I would have spent seeing that person, and I did a workout instead. So I just outlined the workout. I hope that makes sense. Our front door, our key wasn't working properly in our lock, and it's been driving us crazy. We found out, and I don't know if this is like common knowledge, but it was new to us, that if you get a lubricant with that really skinny straw-like thing and you squeeze some lubricant into your door lock, that'll help you turn your key more easily. So if you ever have that issue, try that before you call a locksmith or before you decide you need to get a new lock, because that fixed our problems and we're still kind of in awe that that was the solution. And then this is when we went to Japan. I didn't bring this with me, so when we came back, I just used this space to swatch out some of the washi tape that I got, and then I just wrote out some of the cities that we visited in marker. And we were away this week, so I didn't bring this with me. And this is the final week. And I really liked this sticker right on the Sunday where it's a flower and it says the end. On these pages, I wrote down some future dates that I needed to migrate over to my new weekly supplement. Whenever I have anything here that are future dates, I prefer to put them in the sidebar here because I'm looking at this every day. I'm flipping through this all the time. It's much more likely that I'm going to remember to do things if they're in here, as opposed to a monthly calendar. I don't know why, but I've never been able to keep up with a monthly calendar. I mean, it makes so much sense to put future dates in your monthly calendar, but for some reason, my brain just doesn't make that connection to consistently look at that page. And so I would write things down and then I would completely forget them. So I find having dates in my digital calendar is a must, especially for things that are involving other people. For me, that's going to help me remember it and make sure it happens. It's in this book. So this is probably one of my most important books, and I love how small it is. So this is what it looks like with all of the fluff. And then this is what a new one looks like. After I finish filming, I'm going to remove all of these little censored sticky notes. And I do save these for future things that I might want to censor. After I remove these, I think this is still going to be relatively thin. The thickest part is just at the bottom because I put a lot of stickers at the bottom. But it's very manageable and it didn't get too heavy or anything like that. So I really loved this. So that's the weekly supplement. Okay, now we move on to the original. When I started this book, I had kind of hoped that I would eventually transition over into this being my main planner. It was likely that I was going to be more on the go. So I started out the year still using my Cousin because that's what worked really well for me the previous year. And then about halfway through the year, I transitioned over to this being my planner. So for the index pages, I haven't really done anything with this. What I probably would do is I would pull out any important pages that I'd want to reference in the future and note them down here. For my cousin, I was filling in every one of these things with the main topic that corresponded to the daily page. That made it harder to actually find information that I really wanted to find. So I think if I were to fill this out, I would only pull out things that I know I'm likely to want to reference in the future. For the monthlies, because I don't really use monthlies, I mainly just use this as like an ink kind of journal. So I started out by showing whenever I inked a pen with a new ink, this is where I would note it down, like the ink that I used. Sometimes if I bought new inks, I would also note them down. So I bought Sailor Ink Studio 573, and I believe this is the day that I bought it. So I noted it down there. And these were just me trying out new inks. In April, I did a 30 inks, 30 days with my own inks. So these were all bottle inks that I owned except for these ones. So I didn't really keep up with this too much. I also experimented with doing meal planning on a monthly basis because when I first started meal planning, I actually did do it on a monthly basis, and I thought I might want to try that again, but I opted to do my meal planning in my Hobonichi weeks again, just because then it lives in a place where I can do my meal planning with my partner. And this is my personal book. And then this was my ink vent for December. So my intentions for the book before were that I didn't have to fill it out every day. This was for relaxation, not productivity, so that obviously changed. Don't have to be perfect, still the same. You can spend as much time or as little on each page. Have fun. It could be interesting to update on this side how the book evolved. I think that could be kind of interesting, so maybe I'll go back and do that. I started off the year with a currently inked. This was a bunch of ink samples that Danielle from my Dandelion Diaries sent me. I was so excited to receive all of these, and I think I forgot to continue checking these off, but I think I've tried almost all of these samples now in one of my pens. I think the only ones I haven't tried yet are Goldfish and Byzantium. More ink samples from Danielle. And it started out as a place where I was just writing my thoughts on inks, showing what pen I was putting them in. Lots of currently inks. I like to see my inks all together on one page. Sometimes doing some doodles. This was the cover that I really wanted to buy, the Cats on Toast. I didn't buy it because I didn't need another cover, so I thought maybe if I drew it, I could look at it and enjoy Keiko Shibata's artwork. I also experimented with trying to challenge myself to do a sketch a day. It didn't last very long, but I liked these sketches. It's inspiration for our office. Comparison between Pilot Irishizuku Inaho and Ferris Wheel Press Goose Poupon. More ink and pen pairings. These two inks, Ferris Wheel Press Writing Desk, which is the first ink I ever bought and one of my favorites, I thought looked so similar to Birmingham Pen Co. Extra Dimensional Umber when they dry. This one is a lot shinier when it's wet, but when they dry, they seem really similar to me. So you can see I wasn't really that consistent. I had a lot of blank pages, and as much as I tried to tell myself that I didn't want to stress about it, I did start to feel like this book was becoming quite irrelevant for me, and I just wasn't really reaching for it. In an effort to revive the book, in April, I decided to do a 30 days, 30 inks of my own, and I started to use this to swatch out all of my ink bottles that I own. And then in May, I kind of fell back into not really using this book too much other than for the occasional, like, currently inked. Here I was trying out a bunch of different brown inks because I had this idea that I had to find the perfect brown ink for my custom 823 that would become the, like, permanent pen and ink pairings. But I've since let go of that idea because I love the pen so much that I can't help but occasionally want to try different inks with it. So far I've tried Writing Desk. It's currently inked with this Kobe Shioa Vintage Sepia number 52. Toffee was one of my favorites. I think I filled that up about 4 or 5 times before I switched to something else. And then Tsukushi, which if I did have to pick a permanent pairing, it would be this ink. But given that this ink is discontinued, I'm always thinking in the back of my head, I have to have another ink that I enjoy just as much so I can stretch out the lifetime of this ink. So this is around the time I started testing and seeing how I felt about moving what I was previously doing in my traveler's notebook. So I had a blank insert that I was using kind of as a rolling daily, and I was missing the dated timeline because it was fine for getting my to-do lists down, but it was harder for me to set aside like future tasks on different days and getting a sense of like time passing, because it was so focused on just being a giant to-do list, and I just wanted a little more structure. So I had thought about doing that in the Cousin, but something about this small book really intrigued me. So I tried it out as a layout, and then I continued to use it for whatever, because I was still using the Cousin at the time. This is when I was trying to see if I could mix a permanent ink version of Robert Oster's Toffee, because I do prefer to have my inks, if possible, be permanent, because I'm clumsy and I spill water on things, and I don't like the idea that all my stuff could be gone. I haven't quite figured out the combination, but I got pretty close with some of these experiments. And this indicates, this is my note to self. This is when I actually started using this as the planner, so I guess it was around June 12th. And it was a lot neater in the beginning. I was having my meetings in the top left, I would have my to-do list down here, and then I would use this for any notes that were relevant to maybe meetings I had that day or anything kind of life admin related, this would be the place for it. I also experimented when I didn't have a lot going on. I would try to do a little mini journaling. And while I like this, it's pretty repetitive because I do journal in other books. So as much as I like this, it was kind of feeling like extra work. It looks nice though. And I like doing my ink thoughts. So whenever I have a blank space, sometimes I don't do it on the day, but I'll go back and find a blank space and I'll just write how I'm feeling about an ink and a pen combination, which I think is kind of nice. This is when I got a ton of ink samples from Danielle. These were all the Birmingham Pen Co. Atomics. I think this is probably one of my favorite spreads. They don't look like this all the time, but I love the colors. This is Robert Oster's khaki, and then I think this is Sakushi. So I have my meetings, I've got my to-dos. This is Urban Sienna. I have a little bit of like micro journaling, and then if I had a project that I wanted to highlight because there were things specific to it, I would just outline in a box. Ink thoughts, and then for a while I was recording my breakfast, lunch, and dinner here, but I have moved this information over to my health tracker. And because this was the Japanese version, I had to write out the days, which I didn't mind. I also did a little bit of Japan planning. We didn't end up visiting these locations, but these were some of the things that we were considering. Information on pet insurance. More currently inked. I actually used this a lot. That's why you see a lot of things covering it, because this became extremely helpful. I mentioned that I've been going to a lot of doctor's appointments and things like that, and I would bring this with me, and this would be the perfect space for me to write things down that I would want to remember related to that day. I think if I had had the Cousin on me, it doesn't fit on your lap as easily. It's really big. Information can get lost, but this was perfect. So after I film this, I'm actually excited to take off all of these little censored pieces, and this is going to be a reference book that I reach for all the time because there's still a lot of information here that's going to be useful for me even in this year. But I also have a lot of blank spaces, and I could go back and I could probably put a sticker on it, or I could maybe color it in. But sometimes it's also just good to have blank spaces for me to use as scrap paper if I ever need it. So I didn't mind having the blank spaces. I went through this phase where I decided to use Pilot Irishizuku Konpeki as my base ink color, and so now I make sure that every pen that I have, whether it's existing or new, is inked with Konpeki so that I can compare how they are all against each other. So it's been really fun to do that. I have a similar page in my Hobonichi Cousin, and I also have one here. And I mean, I have an ink log as well, but I don't know. It was really nice to see them all together. A little bit of overlap, but sometimes I use the blank pages for talking points or notes for my videos that I do. This is probably going to live in the Cousin, but sometimes my Cousin was so full of other notes that I needed to use this, so it was where I had space. I have a couple of pages there that I'm censoring. Lots of notes on insurance. These were dried petals from flowers that a friend got me. Sketches from a trip that we did, a day trip that Mike and I did. And I think it's okay also to have a blank page where you just have, nothing. I remember around this time I was starting to feel kind of burnt out. And so I remember this day was a Sunday and I had a complete offline recharge day. I kind of isolated myself to try to recharge. This was an ink accident. Thoughts on Hobonichi Day. I had a lot of thoughts. Every year, my friends and I will get together and we will buy bushels of tomatoes and make tomato sauce to have for the rest of the year. Copied a bunch of fall reads from a YouTuber that I really like to watch, Darling Desi. She does a lot of book recommendations, and I was looking for books to borrow from the library in anticipation for our Japan trip. So I watched a few of her videos and I just copied a bunch of her recommendations down, and then I tried to take them all out at the library, and whatever was available, and then the rest I just put on hold, and I've been slowly getting them. So I'm kind of reading fall reads now in the winter, but I appreciated having a list to work from. This was from the Pelican Hub. This is where I got to meet other folks from the Pelican Hub, and I got to try all these cool pens. And then these were some of the ink samples that I picked up in the exchange. And this was from the Coffee Monsters Co. and Wonder Pens workshop. That was so fun. These are some of the stamps that Helen brought. This was her Day to Night ink, which is really pretty. And then this is the Japan trip. So after we came back from Japan, I went in and I logged as much as I could remember that we did on these pages, and they have come in so handy. So I'm really glad I did this. This took a lot longer than I expected it to take, I will be completely honest, because I had to go researching, I had to Google things. It was a little challenging, but now I have this record and I'm so happy that I did this. And I think around this time I started to get starting to have some skin issues that were, I think, exacerbated from my trip. So mental health, not so great. And this is that ink sample stamp that I got from Scriptus. And this is where I started noting down the ink vent inks. I did have a lot of notes to take in December, so you will see a lot of censored information, but it was fun to kind of find a spot to show the inks that I was trying out on the pages. Some potential words I was considering for 2025. I still don't know what my word of the year is. And that is it. We are at the end. I wish I could say that I made better use of good use of these graph pages in the back, but I really didn't. I did a zig clean dot marker test at one point, and then when I went to the Wonder Pens TSL workshop, I stamped all of their stamps in this book, which maybe wasn't the greatest idea because you can see there's a lot of bleed through, and so in hindsight, I wish I had stamped them on a separate book where I could still cut out the pages and use them in my scrapbooking. I did these upside down. And that's it. I really didn't use these back pages very much, which feels like a bit of a waste. I guess just from a functional perspective, I was so focused on using these pages that I really didn't reach for any of these extra pages. On my 100, near the end of the year, I started writing out the inks that I used, but there wasn't even enough room to note down the ink and the pen that it was in. So I don't know, maybe I'll do something like this again just because I'll have a lot of Hobonichis with my 100 lists, and I'm always looking for ideas on how to use this. So if you have suggestions, let me know. But that's it. All right, that is my flip through of my 2024 weekly supplement and Hobonichi Techo. Let me know if you have any questions or comments on what you saw. This is kind of chunky compared to a brand new one. This is what it looks like, but I think if I remove all of the little post-its and things that I use to censor my pages, I'd be really curious to see how thick this actually is. So after I finish filming this, I am going to remove them all, and if the difference is pretty noticeable, I will insert either another video clip or a picture to show you. But even with it being this puffy, it was a little bit more challenging to write on this page, like this side of the book, but overall, these books hold up so well. And I don't know, I love this book. Like, look how it just fits so great in your hand. It's so portable to bring this to me wherever I need to go, and I have enough room to make as many notes as I want. This is just such a great little insert. I thought I would have preferred to have this as part of the original, like the way the Cousin has the monthlies, the weeklies, and the dailies all in one. But I actually prefer having these separate because I can always have this open, and then I can also always have this open. So instead of always having to flip back and forth, which was something that I didn't like about the Cousin, I love that I can have these both open at once. So I'm a huge fan. If you are a weekly supplement user, I'd love to know what you think about it. I know depending on the type of work you do, it may not be useful because it's not really enough space to do memory keeping or any kind of major detail. But if you're someone who has a lot of meetings and they don't tend to move around too much, I'm so in love with this book. And it was no question that I wanted to use the same system for 2025. You know, I get bored easily. Maybe this won't work and I'll change my mind partway through the year. I'm not going to beat myself up if the situation changes and I feel the need to change my system. But for now, this is what I'm going with. I'm really happy with how this went. And it's nice to have some continuity and confidence that I've got a system that I know is going to work for me really well. All right, I've been talking long enough. If you're still here, thank you so much for being here with me today. And if you were at my live stream yesterday, or if you have watched the replay, thank you so much. Thanks for your time today. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for being here with me and hanging out. I appreciate all of you so much, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Bye.